we are continuing, I suppose, what is my live stream series. So we are back doing a live stream. I do have, I'm using my Queen Elizabeth mug. I'm not sure if you can see, but this mug I've had a while. It was gifted many years ago now from a subscriber, and it's got beautiful designs of the late Queen Elizabeth on it, which I think is rather gorgeous. So I should be taking sips from that every night, every time I need a sip of royal tea. But yes, we have so much royal tea going on, don't we? I mean, it's everywhere. So I thought I'd pop on, and we're probably going to talk about the implications of Harry refusing to accept, or seemingly refusing to accept Jeremy Clarkson's apology, and what that might mean for reconciliation talks within the royal family. It's not looking good. Also, Harry's new diplomacy issue, of course, relating to what he said in his book about how many people he had killed, basically. Also, Catherine has been out today at Fox Hill's nursery, the Princess of Wales, looking absolutely resplendent and gorgeous. And we're also going to be talking about Harry's book sales and anything else that you guys want to talk about, because obviously the benefit of being a live chat is that I can answer questions that come to me from here. So we'll start as always, well, not as always, because sometimes I forget, but I'm going to tell you about the jewels I'm wearing. So I've worn this one quite a few times now. It is a replica Queen Victoria brooch. It's actually the Prince Albert brooch. He gifted it to her. So it's a beautiful sapphire with diamonds. I do wish that they were real. And I also have the kind of matching tiara to go with it. This is a Queen Victoria tiara. And again, she wore this during her reign. And it's now, I do believe, in the Victoria and Albert Museum. So if you want to go and see it, then the real one, then you can hop along there and you'll be able to see it, as well as another tiara as well. Right. Okay, so hello to everyone who has just dropped in. I'm just going to refresh my screen because I don't think it's updated with all the relevant information. Hang on. Has it updated? Bear with just a second. I'm just checking if everything's updated. I think it does. Anyway, so let's start with Jeremy Clarkson's apology. So we're not going to get into what was said because I've spoken about that in previous videos. So if you want to go and see what I've said about that, you can go and watch the previous videos. But I do want to talk about, when I made the last video, we hadn't had the response from, I do believe, Prince Harry. I don't think we had it. So Omid Scobie, obviously the Sussex's spokesperson, if you like, unofficial spokesperson, tweeted what the response was. So we know that Jeremy Clarkson made an apology in private on Christmas Day, and we know that it was, well, we now know that it was only addressed to Harry, and we know that he did that because he tweeted, not tweeted, he put on Instagram, Jeremy Clarkson put on Instagram that he had apologised. So anyway, a spokesperson for Prince Harry and Meghan have responded to Jeremy Clarkson's Instagram apology and claims that he emailed them in December. So Omid Scobie posted a screenshot picture of on December the 25th, 2022, Mr. Clarkson wrote solely to Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex. The contents of his correspondence were marked private and confidential. While a new public apology has been issued today by Mr. Clarkson, what remains to be addressed is his long-standing pattern of writing articles that spread hate, rhetoric, dangerous conspiracy theories, and misogyny. Unless each of his other pieces were also written in a hurry, as he states, it is clear that it is not an isolated incident shared in haste, but rather a series of articles shared in hate. Okay, so this is absolutely not an apology acceptance. I think nobody can really read those words as an apology acceptance. Now, of course, you know, Clarkson, I suppose, didn't have to apologise to either of them. And depending upon, I suppose, what the contact details that Clarkson was able to get, he did address it. So Harry and Meghan say, or rather, Harry says to just Harry. Now, of course, if you're apologising to someone, I imagine that you would want to apologise to the person that you have offended. In this case, it would be Meghan. So what I'm assuming is obviously in the first kind of part of Harry's response, he's put the contents of his correspondence were marked private and confidential. Now, this I don't think was put there um, for no reason at all. Harry has recognised it's a private and confidential email, letter, whatever you want to call it, because of Meghan's case against the Daily Mail with the letter to her father. So they know they've shot themselves in the foot because they know that they now cannot republish any emails, text messages, letters that they have been sent because somebody could do the same as what they did to the Mail on Sunday and they could sue. So wanting to avoid being sued by Jeremy Clarkson, they've said that it remained private and confidential. But that, in turn, also hides what the actual content of the letter was. In other words, the initial letter may have been addressed to just Prince Harry, but the apology inside, we don't know because we haven't seen it, may have apologised to Meghan. So just because something's addressed to somebody doesn't necessarily mean that within the body of that letter or email, there may well have been a proper apology to Meghan in it. We don't know. Um, but then, obviously, the le- the response goes on to attacking Jeremy Clarkson for not just the piece he wrote about Meghan, but all the other pieces. In other words, I suppose trying to cancel him. Basically, I mean that's I suppose what it's trying to do. And of course, Jeremy Clarkson has felt the repercussions of his actions, of his words. It's reported that he has lost many contracts and many shows once they have finished airing. So, what does this mean in terms of the wider context within the reconciliation that Harry is said to want from the royal family? Well, I don't think it's going to do anything for trust issues. I said in the previous videos that the biggest issue and hurdle in terms of a reconciliation is trust. Neither side feels like they can trust the other. And when it comes to Harry, quite clearly said that he wants the royal family to apologise to Meghan. Just the same as wanting Jeremy Clarkson to apologise to Meghan. The problem is now that they have basically refused, not accepted an apology once they've got one from Jeremy Clarkson, could they do the same thing to William and Charles? I mean, I'm not saying they should, but if William and Charles did capitulate and apologise in private to Meghan and Harry, would it be enough for it to be a private apology? Would they want something a bit more public? Would they want a statement to go along with it? Would they leak it themselves? And would they perhaps just dismiss it in the same way that they did with Jeremy Clarkson? So if I was William and if I was Charles, alarm bells would be ringing. And of course, this comes out just at a time when I suppose there's been rumblings in the press from both sides about reconciliation. So I feel like Harry and Meghan again have shot themselves in the foot by being this way towards Jeremy Clark, rather than just being gracious and just accepting the apology at face value. They had to go further, didn't they? They had to kind of dig that knife in or stab the knife in. But I don't think it's worked in their favours because if they were any way close whatsoever to getting any kind of apology towards reconciliation, I think that's not going to help with the trust because how can William and Charles trust them now if they apologised, even if they were just apologising to placate, just to placate Harry and Meghan, and they didn't really mean it, then Harry and Meghan could just shoot them down. And then it's almost like setting them up for failure. It's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like blackmail, by saying I've got 400 pages left, spare. I've got 400 pages spare of spare. That could be another book. It's like threatening. And then, like I said, if William and Charles did capitulate, then they could just turn around and do exactly the same thing. So I don't think it's done anything for trust issues. All sorts says it's immaturity. It is, to be quite honest. I mean, if someone, whether or not you think it's sincere or not, if someone apologizes to you, you can at least be gracious. And Jeremy Clarkson didn't just let the apology, remain private. He did publicly say that he's apologized. So, Harry and Meghan got that bit of gratification from him making it public. Now, I know that he probably made it public so that he could, you know, feather his own nest, so to speak, and take some of the heat off him, because he has faced a lot of heat and a lot of implications from his words. Um, but yeah, whatever. He's made it public, and they could have been a little bit more gracious. Lady Buckingham says Harry was no-show during Meghan's podcast days, so now Meghan is making scarce during his time. Yeah, I mean that's one thing royal commentators have noted is the lack of Meghan, and of course Harry's memoir is about him, so this is very much his project. In the same way that the Archewell podcast became more about Meghan. Now I don't know whether or not that was initially how it was supposed to be. I think it was probably supposed to be a Harry and Meghan podcast, because on that very, very early Christmas special, that was the very first one to be put out on Archewell Audio, um, it was very much both of them. And I think a lot of people thought and felt that that was the direction it was going to go. Then, after a very big absence, when there was rumours that Spotify was really pushing them to produce something. I think it was almost 2 years where they didn't produce anything. And then suddenly out came, what we saw as Meghan's podcast. So I don't always think it was supposed to be just Meghan. But anyway, it ended up the podcast being Meghan's project, which was successful. And of course, I'll skip down to one of my other points now, whilst we're talking about it. Harry's memoir, Spare, has been successful. It has been entered into the Guinness Book of World Records as the fastest selling non-fiction book of all time. I think in the UK, for the first week, across all different forms of outlet, audio, physical book, whatever, I think it sold about 700 and something thousand copies in the first week, which is a huge success. I don't think anyone can deny the level of interest in this book because of all the revelations that are contained within it. We've not had anything like this since Diana's day, of course, with the famous Andrew Morton book. Although I am surprised that the Diana Andrew Morton one wasn't faster selling. But anyway, I suppose there's more population now, and people are ordering and pre-ordering, and people haven't got to physically stand in a bookstall queue to get a book. So anyway, I think we can concede that it's been a big success. But just because there's a level of interest, just because people have bought the book, doesn't mean that it's a display of support necessarily for Harry. It just means that there's a lot of nosy people out there that want all the juicy royal details and all the juicy royal gossip. And they want to, and a lot of people, quite rightly so, I suppose, want to read it for themselves rather than hearing it maybe secondhand or through quotes or through excerpts. So I can understand the level of interest, but it doesn't, if any Harry and Meghan, or if Harry and Meghan are reading it as, I suppose, a show of support, almost like a vote of confidence, if you like, I think that would be very false. That would be very false to think along those lines. Just because people are buying it doesn't mean that they necessarily agree with the contents of the book. It's not like a political vote, basically. But yes, we can categorically say that it has been really successful. And in a wider context, we can kind of, I suppose, gauge and measure the level of interest that the British royal family do generate around the world. If there was no interest, if there was no appetite for the British royal family, if monarchy was over, then there wouldn't be that level of interest. And I think even someone who is now not a working member of the royal family's book can sell out like that, then I think it just goes to show that interest in the royal family is still there, basically. So monarchy itself can take that as a wider success, I suppose. Little Annie says Charles and William should not apologise to Harry and Meghan. They should not be invited to the coronation, and it's not about them. Let them go and live on their spoils of betrayal. Wow, it sounds scandalous. Sounds like a telenovela. No, with regards to the coronation, I think I've considered it a lot, and I do think that it probably is better for them to be invited. Then they have the option of whether or not they want to attend. I've said before, I'll say again, they're in between a rock and a hard place. If they come, they'll face criticism for wanting attention or wanting to get a renewed sprinkle of that royal magic, so they can go back to the US and monetize it. So if they come, they'll be shot down in flames. And if they stay away, they'll also be shot down in flames because people will say that they're snubbing their family, and he's not being nice to his father. So they aren't really going to win necessarily. However, if they do turn up, I think there are things that can be done to minimize the amount of exposure that Harry and Meghan will have. So, for example, the seating plan at the coronation is very important. They could put Harry and Meghan towards the back. They can categorically make sure that Harry and Meghan are not seen alongside William and Catherine, and of course, the King and the Queen. Any balcony, because I imagine there will be a balcony display after the coronation, so they could strip that back to only maybe the line of succession on the balcony, or even just members of the working royal family. So even if they attend, there are ways of minimizing them. Just like what was seen during Trooping the Colour. So the royal families had a little bit of practice of how to minimize them, but yet still have them there as members of the family. Charles obviously doesn't want his boys to make his final years a misery, as Harry revealed in his book. And I think both of them really have a duty to make sure that their father's reign goes as good as it can. And I think Harry is just doing everything in his power to completely sabotage it. But in trying to sabotage and take down the monarchy, he's also sabotaging and hurting himself as well. I'm going to scale up a little bit. Susan S says he is bent on exploitation and domination. Spare is so great because everyone can read for themselves how evil and destructive he is and how much more he will be. I mean, just it wasn't even a thinly veiled threat. It was just a complete threat. I've got 400 pages already written, basically ready to go. Those pages won't have been destroyed if the ghostwriter wrote them. They will still be there. So yeah, basically, I mean, I would love to know, what tales the royal family could tell about Harry. I mean, just imagine Harry's coming out with all of this about, William and Catherine and his father and Camilla and all the other courtiers. But just imagine what the reverse would be like. Just imagine if the royal family were not being as dignified as what they are, and they wrote a book about him and Meghan. just imagine, and Harry in his time, even before he met Meghan, just imagine what that sort of book would entail. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. They aren't going to get into a war of words. It's not going to become a very big, although you might imagine it's a very big public spat at the moment. I don't think from the royal family that's how it's going to be batted around. I think from them, silence is golden at the moment. H. London says there is no way these relationships can be compared. Mr. Clarkson is a nobody. He now faces all the consequences for his actions. I agree. He absolutely does face the consequences for his words. Words have power. Words have meaning. I remember that famous saying that the pen is often more mightier than the sword, and through his own freedom of choice, he wrote that article. He's now facing the repercussions of that. But I disagree on the comparison. You can compare it because it's an apology. Jeremy Clarkson apologised to Harry and Meghan. They refused the apology. It wasn't good enough. I don't think anything would have been good enough for them. And to me, that indicates, is anything going to be good enough for them from the royal family? What do they want? Literally, what do they want? Right, I'm going to scoot down to the bottom. Um, Lisa thinks it's not safe for Meghan and Harry to go to the coronation, so they need to stay home for everyone's safety. I mean, I disagree that it won't be safe because if they were within the orbit of the coronation, there would be masses of protection there anyway. I mean, not necessarily specifically for them, but just the amount of protection that goes into even protecting members of the crowd, for example. There will be police, armed police everywhere, um, and obviously when they're actually in the abbey, all that protection will be there. So I don't necessarily think that they won't be safe. Plus, they will be able to have their own bodyguards, although they won't be able to carry weapons in terms of guns. Um, but no, I don't think it would be unsafe for them to come. Um, I think that's not really true. Connie says, can you explain the comments Harry made about how William and Catherine are raising that? Yes, I spoke about that in the previous video at length. Um, but basically, it all boils down to Harry trying to meddle with William's children and trying to put on William's children how Harry felt when he was growing up and going through his life. And I think William quite rightly, although he did say that William listened, but in the end, William turned around and said, my children are none of your concern," which I think is quite right. And I think many families will have experienced, aunties or grandmothers or mother-in-laws trying to, put in their two pennies worth of how the younger generation should raise their children, and it doesn't always go down well. It's not always welcome. So I think this is something that perhaps a lot of families can relate to. And I think lots of families will kind of come to the conclusion that it's best to let, uh, you know, you can be there to offer advice, but it's best to let people parent their own children. Lady Londinium says, H London, ask the Montecito couple when they will stop trashing the royals. Um, well, I'd love to know. I mean, probably when the money dries up, I would imagine. I mean, when the money keeps rolling in, they're probably not going to stop, are they? Right. Betsy says, the I'm okay, you're okay method might help with reconciliation someday. I think the best thing is for them all just to accept that they're going to disagree. I don't think there's anything wrong with agreeing to disagree. Um, Draw a line under it, move on, and start going forwards with a new relationship. Although, like I say, that all goes back to trust. And I think for both of them, I think leaks and planting would have to stop. I don't think either side should be briefing against each other or leaking information. I am totally against leaking information at the expense of another family member. I don't agree with. So I think drawing a line under it, agreeing to disagree, Harry and Meghan agreeing not to overtly make money off the back of, you know, their royal connection, so to speak. And in turn, the royal family embracing them to family events, whatever, perhaps would be the compromise that would be workable. But that takes trust. And I think with what Harry has done now, that's going to take a while to get to that point. Lisa says no new title. Oh, Harry and Meghan wouldn't get new titles. Um, even with when William becomes king, Harry and Meghan wouldn't have any extra new titles. They they would always have been the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Right, I'm going to move on, I think, to the diplomacy issue. So this relates to Iran. Now, obviously, Harry, in his memoir Spare, um, kind of opened up, I guess you could say, on how many people he had killed during his time in the armed forces. Now, a lot of ex-service personnel have come out and said that they feel that that's perhaps not really the done thing, because it can put yourself at risk and danger. And I said when it all first happened that I thought it's either one of two things. It's either Harry is being really naive and not very bright and not realizing that it could put himself in harm's way, or he's doing it intentionally to perhaps get his royal protection back when he's in the UK. Now, a lot of people have been speculating even further, saying that perhaps it's to get internationally protected person status put on him so that he has that protection, I think, afforded by whatever country that he's in. So I think that means that obviously he's in the USA. Therefore, if he's an internationally protected person, I think the USA has to fund that protection. So some people are saying that he's not only trying to get the British royal protection back when in the UK, but also that he's trying to get it for whatever country he visits from whatever country that he's visiting. So, could that be a wider move? The only thing that I think is really naive about that is that if you put yourself in that position and you reignite interest in yourself, which is what he's done, he has reignited the interest in himself. Whereas, people, all these countries, Afghanistan and all these countries may have forgotten, or it's kind of shrunk to the back of their mind that he was involved. They now have a renewed sense of admittance, I suppose, to what he's done. Anyway, it's caused a new, I suppose, diplomacy issue. And yeah, lots of people have dubbed him a stupid boy. Um, and I'm trying to scoot down and see exactly what they said. Because it was somewhere. Here we go. So the UK government said something about Iran. And yesterday, Iran's foreign ministry fired back, tweeting, the British regime, whose royal family member sees the killing of 25 people, innocent people, as the removal of chess pieces, has no regrets over the issue, and those who turn a blind eye to a war crime are in no position to preach to others on human rights. So, I mean, I'm not going to get into the content of that actual of the truth of what the Iranian foreign minister said, because obviously we all know that that is just spin and rhetoric. But it does go to show that other foreign countries will now use Harry's words, whereas before they wouldn't have had those words to use, back against the UK, and all of those that serve in the armed forces, or ex-service personnel as well. So again, words have implications. The pen is more mightier than the sword. So Harry most definitely has scored an own goal when he included that in the book. I don't know in which world he thought that that was going to be constructive. And I'm not buying the whole that he wanted to improve mental health, blah, blah, blah. In fact, I think it's actually caused a massive headache, not only for himself, but for other people and countries as well. So, yes. Ingrid says a total disappointment to his family and to Britain. His popularity is at the lowest point it's ever been here in the UK. Lauren says, I believe he would still be allowed his prince title as that is his birthright. It would take an act of parliament to change an already existing piece of law to strip the titles. So technically, if they changed that legislation, um, they could take away the ducal titles, but it would be a bit more difficult to remove the prince status and the HRH. H London, I did listen to the interview and I do know why he says he talked about it, but why would you not include why in the book? I think he backtracked and I think he saw the massive fallout and I think he saw a massive mistake that he'd made and he was trying to cover his tracks. Snappy Speak says, Harry has made me respect the working royals more than I ever thought I could. I mean, it most certainly has highlighted the royals that have given duty and service for all of their life, not just, less than 10 years. 10 years is not a lifetime. I think we even more value and respect Her late Majesty the Queen. We respect King Charles for his lifetime of service and duty. Camilla, since marrying in, hasn't really put a foot wrong. Princess Anne is absolutely invaluable. The Wessexes quietly get on with it. And to a lesser extent, even Beatrice and Eugenie, when they're required, they do what they have been asked to do, and then they don't ever tell or anything like that. So it does make you respect, and also all the former Queen's cousins as well, all the quiet work that they do. Lauren says this has got to end at some point. There is only so many times they can tell the same story, then change it. I'm hoping it ends soon, but I can't see that happen straight away. Scott says, did you hear that the Prime Minister could decide whether he attends the coronation? I've heard that, but I think that is a false thing. It's not up to the Prime Minister who attends the coronation. There's a coronation committee. Lord Cholmondeley, I think, is in charge of the coronation. The King will have a huge say over who attends. So I don't really think the Prime Minister will have that much say in it, to be honest. Scott says Meghan is waiting for it all to crash and then sell Harry out like Dr. did. And Lauren says, but he is as really upset. The army is whatever. He was trying to do it by that time it came with. I think Harry must be absolutely reeling from the fact that he has upset with that comment. It's either it was really, really calculated and he meant to do it, or it's that he's incredibly naive and stupid, quite frankly. Chris says, you state Harry is backtracking while you are willing to justify any action taken by the working royals. I haven't justified any action taken by the working royals. I have said categorically over and over and over again that I do not I do not support the leaking of information against one another. So in that respect, if that has gone on, I don't agree with that. So I haven't defended any action taken by the working royals, and I do most definitely think that Harry is backtracking. Ingrid says, I was going to buy his book, but then I asked myself, why pay to read the garbage? And Lauren says, and put people at serious risk in the process, normal members of society that should have never have been said or printed at all. What words have power? Right, I am going to. What have I not spoke about so far? Oh yes, Catherine today has been out, looking lovely, And she has been at the Fox Cubs Nursery in Luton in the UK as part of her ongoing work to highlight the best practices for parenting in the early years. Now, we know that something big is going to come with her work in the early years, and I think she's kind of shoring up that work by having a series of visits to support it. So the Princess of Wales had a long chat with the educators, as nursery staff are known, reflecting the crucial role that they play in shaping children's early lives. And she also spent time with some of the parents. And I do have a photograph of Catherine looking rather lovely, if I can just get to it. I did have it a moment ago. Um, so yeah, it's just really important work to be doing, and I think that is definitely where her career, if you like, is going to take her. It's the early years. It's something that she sees as fundamental for mental health that affects adults in later life. Here we are. I have the photo. She's wearing a beautiful orange today. I just get rid of all the adverts that pop up. There we go. So there is Catherine, and she's wearing a beautiful orange. I think she's wearing some sapphire earrings, obviously to match the sapphire engagement ring. Let me know what you think about the turtleneck. Are we loving the turtleneck? I know turtlenecks can be can be like people either love them or hate them. And I think this photo is really cute as well. She's obviously the children have made a mask and she's sort of peeping behind it. Her hair looks absolutely gorgeous. Really looks stunning. So she has been there today. William's carrying on working. Scott says Princess Anne is a legend. H. London says being closed-minded does not promote mutual understanding. It absolutely does not, and I think Harry would most definitely care to take note of your words. Um, Lisa says my blood is boiling. I got to take a break. Well, have fun. Karen's on Harry and Meghan's side 100%. Connie says, do you think Harry and Meghan's marriage will last with all the craziness? At some point, it must take its toll. I mean, I think it's already taken a toll in terms of both of their mental health. Although Harry says that he's perfectly happy, we know even that the court case that Meghan brought against the Daily Mail with regards to that letter that was published from her father, we know that that took a mental health toll on Meghan, and she actually suffered her miscarriage during that episode. So I think they've already, all the craziness, if you like, has already taken a toll on both sides, on the royal family and on Harry and Meghan's side. So I think that is fair to say on both sides, it must be a massive, massive strain. And I think everybody would benefit from it coming to a conclusion. And like I said, I can only see that conclusion being drawing a line under it, saying, you know, we're going to have to agree to disagree, but going forwards, we need to start rebuilding that trust. And I think that's the only way they're really going to get through it. Christine says, is it true Princess Anne controls Harry's legacy from the Queen Mother? I'm not right. So from the Queen Mother, she did leave a portion of um, her legacy, if you like, to not only children but grandchildren as well. I would have thought that that trust would already be in their control. Now we know that Diana's is. I think Diana's was kind of settled in two. As soon as they met two age markers, I think it was settled. So I do believe that they are all in control of what they've inherited over the years. But it is true that any trust funds will have had controllers. It wouldn't have just been one person. It would have been, usually it's a series of trustees that kind of oversee it until the beneficiaries become of age. So I imagine that is the pattern it would have taken. Um, right, I am going to, I think, probably leave it there now. I will obviously be back either tomorrow or the next day with any more royal happenings. If anything, comes in, I'll give you a few minutes just to get any questions in. We'll do a brief question and answer session at the end. Colleen says, I think Catherine could show up in a potato sack and still look beautiful. I'm sure it'd be very itchy on the skin. But yes, she would absolutely. London says Catherine did look so beautiful today. She has her own element when with children. Indeed. Yes, the head injury was actually William. William, as a child, well, early teen, did sustain an injury at a polo match, which he fully recovered from. Chris says the Harry and Meghan docu-series proved by the sharing of the sworn document, the first witness statement of Edward Verity. Well, to be honest, I didn't see it, so so I can't comment on that one. Olympic Grand Lurker says the rate that Meghan spends money, they'll have nothing left for their children or grandchildren. Well, I mean, they're both spending the money. Um, Colleen says, I think Harry releasing all the personal information about his family is unforgivable, especially when they are crying about their own privacy. Like I said, I don't necessarily think they want privacy. I think they want control. And specifically, I think they want to control the media. And, in a free press society, especially when you're a member of the royal family and not just a bog standard celebrity, um, that is not always the case. It doesn't always square up. There is a symbiotic relationship between the UK government, the press, and the monarchy. It all kind of works symbiotically. Um, let's have a look. Oh, well, 94 says Harry dresses and looks like he has spent time in a drunk ward. He does tend to wear the same clothes. I think I've seen the same shoes for many, many, many years. Um, Kitchy says, "Is it true that Harry has always been cheap with money?" I don't think. I mean, although you see members of the royal family, especially the royal wives, dressed up in all designer clothes, blah blah blah, and of course the men have lovely tailored suits. But when it comes to their what I would say personal wardrobe, the royal men in particular don't really spend, I don't think, a lot of money. Yes, they may have some nice pieces in there, um, but they tend to kind of rewear a lot of things. I think it's not just the fact that they're members of the royal family. I think lots of posh, very English, very British families tend to kind of wear the same jumper until it's threadbare. They wear the same shoes over and over again. So I don't really think inherently they're that materialistic, even though you would see outwardly looking in that they have all the material things. They have the palaces and the artworks and all that kind of thing. But I think intrinsically, they're actually not that showy. And I think you can see that with William and Catherine's choice to move to Adelaide Cottage. It's one of it's a four-bedroom house basically on the Windsor estate. It's not by royal standards flashy or exuberant, and I think they do prefer to live that sort of modest existence within a very ostentatious setting, if you like. Chris says no, they want truth in the media. They want their truth in the media, which goes back to control. They want to control. Um, they want to put their truth. Yeah, but I agree. He doesn't care. Harry doesn't care about fashion. Yeah, I don't think many of them do. Apart from the royal wives, they They are clothes horses. Um, mm, mm, mm. Lauren says, I'm not really one for fashion, but the royals always look amazing. Yeah. And Chris says, poor example. I don't think it is a poor example because by royal standards, Adelaide Cottage is fairly modest. Yes, they do have many other houses. They have Anmer Hall in Norfolk and they have Kensington Palace Apartment 1A, of which they are spending a lot less time in now. And pretty much their main home is Adelaide Cottage. Don't forget, of course, William is not going to just have those homes. Apparently, when he is king, he will have use of palaces and royal estates and all that kind of thing. So, whilst now able to, they are choosing to live in a relatively modest home. Okay, thank you for watching this video. I've enjoyed talking to everyone. Like I say, please make sure you are subscribed, that you turn the notification bell on so that you know when I'm going to pop up. It will tell you, it should tell you. Normally, I prefer to do live chats. Normally, I go on about 3 p.m. here in the UK, and we talk for about 45 minutes to an hour. So, if you don't want to watch me, it's quite easy to convert me into a podcast. All you've got to do is leave YouTube on, plug in your earphones, put me in your pocket, and then I am converted into a podcast. So, so thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. So remember, recollections may vary.